สวัสดีครับ Greetings from Bangkok. Kasit Piromya once again at the beginning of the month of March 2025. This time I will speak a bit about a very small country in Central America, namely Costa Rica. And why do I pick up or choose Costa Rica? I do so because of late I have been very intrigued about two major happenings in Costa Rica, a country of about 5 million people, wedged between Nicaragua to the north and Panama to the south. What has been happening or have been happening in Costa Rica has caught my attention on two events. Namely, a few years ago, Costa Rica society, the people as a whole, have decided to do away with the armed forces or the military establishment altogether. So Costa Rica is one of the few countries in the world that have no armies or military establishment. If I could recall, maybe Bhutan and Botswana might be the other two countries that never really had a real armed forces and so on. Okay, but Costa Rica did have armed forces, and the people have together decided to do away with the armed forces. And I think the reasons are quite obvious. Costa Rica has no enemies. They have very cordial and long established cooperative relationship with Nicaragua and Panama. Second, Costa Rica is still a developing country, and it needs all the resources to cater to the needs of the people in terms of health, education, infrastructure, housing, public utilities, and so on. And there is also the third reason is there is no external threat forthcoming to Costa Rica. And even if there were to be some threats and so on, Costa Rica would not be in the position to defend itself. To have small armored forces, expensive one, then it's a misallocation of the resources. You should not have to possess anything that cannot be put to use in a proper manner. So the decision of the Costa Rican people a few years ago is a noble one, a logical and rational one, which should be a good subject matter for discussion by the citizens of the world, especially in the global south or in the developing world. Why should we all continue to have armed forces when in fact, in reality, we would not be in the position to defend ourselves? So why have an entity that should be able to defend the country but cannot do so? Then we should not have it. But what would be the alternative? I think maybe two. To continue to forge a cooperative, mutually beneficial relationships with the neighboring countries. And at the same time, to work together to get the support, protection from the United Nations organization. The national individual security should be guaranteed by an international entity, namely the United Nations. And every one of us could declare to be non-aligned or to be part of the neutrality movement. So this is something that leaders, academicians, intellectual circles of all the developing countries must now pay attention to the example of Costa Rica. No army, no armored forces. The country can exist. The second point that I would like to raise for your kind attention is the introduction of this open justice system, which has already been launched in Costa Rica. What is open justice? It just simply means that the judges, the personnel, senior personnel from the judicial branch of government should have a sort of a human contract and contact with ordinary citizens. One could recall in movies or even by personal experience that having to go to a court of justice for a case and so on, the building is very imposing indeed. One has to go up the stairs, so many steps and so on. It's quite threatening and making you feel so small. Then when you get into the courtroom, the judges sit on top in the high mantle. We ordinary citizens have to sit on the ground floor. It's very, very high hierarchical. And the atmosphere is very cold indeed, impersonal. So Costa Rica wanted to do away with this sort of a lack of warmness relationship into a more warmer one, friendly one, and so on. So they have started a series of mingling and meeting between the judges and the ordinary citizens to get to know one another, to air opinions, differences, or even to give recommendation and so on. All in all is to make the judicial system more humane and not of the dispenser of justice, of crimes and punishment and so on. So this is something for fellow developing countries to think about and to introduce this practice of an open justice system. And I leave this for your consideration. Thank you very much. ขอบคุณมากครับ